everyone, my name is Paula Dunn and welcome to the Limited Edition Leadership Show. I am a teenage leadership strategist and cognitive scientist, and today I would love to welcome you to Dr. Nicole Archard. She's the Principal of Loreto College, Marryatville, South Australia. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, Paula.
Great. Just a little bit about Nicole and how I found her. I accidentally came across Nicole when I was checking the mail, and I received an Alumni Magazine from the school, and I opened it, and I came across the first page, and it was Nicole's principal introduction welcome message, and I was hooked. And so for me, I was impressed with Nicole's passion for leadership and empowering our next generation of women. So just a bit about Loreto College. It was named as one of the 44 schools in Australia who are leading innovation and change in education. So I think that's really exciting. And they're very well known for educating strong, passionate and confident girls and young women. So you can see how I was drawn to Nicole instantly, with in particular with what I'm doing with girls as well. So, Nicole, please tell us a bit about yourself and what got you interested in education and leadership to begin with.
Well, try to sum that up into a brief story. I love education. I think education is the one thing that can change people's lives. So I'm a very firm believer in education, and I actually started off my career teaching in a boys' school, but that had girls for years 10, 11 and 12. And I could see that there were many challenges that the girls faced in that environment. Mm-hmm. And I'm a mother of 3 daughters myself, so I had this real vested interest in girls, and being a girl also helps with that. So I actually was undertaking a master's in educational leadership at the time, and I started to focus on women in leadership. And I'm really interested in that sort of social inequity around women missing from prominent leadership positions, or why women don't take up leadership, or why they may, just not be represented in the way that they should, and the reasons that happens. And I think those two paths just collided, where I went, actually, education is such a key opportunity. It's not necessarily a factor that leads to it, but it's an opportunity in order to develop girls with mindsets and skills, etc., to challenge that position of women in society. And from that moment onwards, I became a specialist in girls' education. I've only worked in girls' schools since then. I undertook my PhD in women in leadership and girls' education, and looking at the correlation between those two areas. So I just love being an educator of girls. Girls are awesome. They, are just amazing. You put them in an environment where you can watch them flourish and grow and be part of that journey. So there's no better job that I could actually possibly ask for than being a principal of the girls' school.
That's wonderful, and I can really feel that enthusiasm resonating from you as you're articulating your interest in working with girls and the work you've done. Look, I'm all for that, and having worked in corporate and in leadership roles myself over the past 20 years, I have seen the many challenges that I particularly faced and those women in the workforce, and I think that's where we kind of resonated, because it's like looking at the challenges that women face in terms of their mindset and in terms of their confidence, and whether they're going to put their hands up for a seat at the table, or whether they're going to look at their male counterparts and go, well, I'm not good enough for those types of roles. Dealing with the unconscious bias that we encounter as women in the workforce, and being worried about the lack of opportunities and breaking those glass ceilings, which is not easy to break. And of course, with the roles that we have as women as well, a lot of us want to start families and be a mother as well. And it's kind of like that conflict between roles about, I want to be a great employee and a great leader in my environment, but also I want to be a great nurturing mother and supportive mother. And how do I find those balances between the two and still feel like I'm doing a good job, and I think, and some of the time as well, when I've seen moving into positions of leadership, and obviously the fight for inequality and all of that, it becomes quite a competitive environment where women sometimes aren't the best advocate for supporting women. And I think some of your research also indicates some of the challenges of confidence and competition when around girls. And I think that easily plays out as we grow older because of that gender inequality and the gap.
Yeah. There's lots of really good points of what you've raised, and I think it stems from, you know, our own experience of being a woman and some of the challenges we've had to face, and wanting to look to develop different pathways to help girls not have to sort of deal with those same challenges, or how can we help them navigate those challenges.
Yeah, it's difficult, and it's difficult coming also from a Christian background. Like I also grew up Catholic background, and growing up in the, you know, the doctrines and the teachings that are embedded in us to be good girls and do the right thing and follow the rules and all of that. And I think a lot of times leadership and entrepreneurship is a paradox in the sense of you know, having some sort of masculine traits where they're more risk takers, more like stepping up, standing up, having a voice, standing out, maybe being different to the common, you know, the herd mentality, which is what we're used to as women, to be more nurturers and more part of the group and collaborative. But having a really great mixture of the two, I think, is what's really the benefit of having women in leadership, because we can have that sense of, you know, that presence of collaboration and of that sense of that tempered decision making and analytical skills, but at the same time being able to take that risk and that next step forward. But it's more of a calculated, not such a gung-ho approach to leadership that we've seen more recently.
And I think that's one of the key issues when we're looking at leadership, that leadership itself is an inherently masculine term, and how, if we want to look historically at how we've come to understand leadership, it is as a masculine sort of understanding around types of behaviours of leadership attributes and skills. So it has been about unpacking leadership and redefining leadership to be inclusive of different ways that women lead, and that's the important thing regarding educating our girls and running programs for girls, and beyond girls as well. Looking at programs for, you know, broader society, about harnessing their leadership capacity, harnessing their collaboration. Girls like to come often from a social justice perspective as well. They want to find purpose and reason behind what they're doing. We judge women by their appearance. We judge them by the sound of their voice. We judge them by how tall they are.
Yes.
All of these things have nothing to do with their leadership. And we think that some things that male leaders do are acceptable, but if women do exactly the same things, that it's not acceptable. So there's this conflict that happens, and that's why women are judged very harshly regarding leadership. And we often see when women reach high levels of leadership in you know, various companies or even politics. You know, look at Julia Gillard as a prime example of that. You know, we're judging them for all the wrong reasons as opposed to their leadership capacity.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, if she was a man, she wouldn't have been so critically judged.
Yeah, judge her for her policies rather than, you know,
yes,
appearance, the voice. Those things are irrelevant. So, but that means there's a tough environment out there for our girls that they have to navigate, and it will lead to their exclusion from leadership. It will lead to them being judged harshly. It will lead to their competition between each other. It's not necessarily always being positive, and building those networks, and that's something we focus on very strongly in being a girls' school context, about women supporting other women, lifting each other up, even if that means lifting someone up higher than you. That's fine. That's how we got to create those supportive environments and teach girls how to, you know, a lot of my research is around self-concept and how we understand ourselves and our capacity to lead, because it's not just good enough for girls to have role models. You know, that's important. It's important to have role models. But if they don't have that self-efficacy where they believe they're capable of doing leadership or capable of doing something associated with leadership, and they believe in their capacity, then they won't put themselves forward. in order to do them.
That's,
so
yeah.
identity, self-concept, they're really key, and that's probably at the crux of my research into girls in leadership.
No, that's wonderful, Nicole, because when I was in school, I never saw myself as a leader, and I never put my hand up to do leadership roles because I didn't think I was ever good enough, and there were always other girls that I felt seemed to be more capable because they seemed to come across more confident, more competent, and more capable in my thoughts, in my perceptions of what I consider to be a leader. So, but it wasn't until I moved into the corporate space and I was just doing my job and I was helping, you know, going above and beyond, helping others in my team or in my organization, to give them a step up. And then they turned around saying to me, you know, Paula, you'd be a great manager. And I'd be like, what? I'm just doing my job. And so it wasn't until that people started acknowledging that I had some form of leadership qualities that I started thinking in myself, oh, well, maybe I could do the role. And that's when I started looking outside myself to see, okay, well, what does a leader entail? What are the qualities, the skills, and the attributes that the current leaders in my organization have? And how do I bridge that gap? And how do I work towards developing a leadership mindset, developing the skills and the competencies that I needed to take myself to the next level? So it's one thing, exactly as you say, having that internal self-efficacy to say, well, how do I see myself? Do I consider myself as a leader or a follower? Because I always thought that, you know, I didn't want to rock the boat. I just wanted to do the right thing, be a good girl, and do what I had to do and just tick the boxes. But you can still do that and be a leader, and you can still be yourself and be a leader. And it's just a matter of, getting out of those stereotypes of having that aggressive sort of authoritative leadership style, which is what I grew up with, and going, no, that's not the type of leader that I am, and I don't need to crack the whip to motivate and influence people under my leadership. So, but one of the things I wanted to really talk to you about was what specifically you're doing, that you've done at Loreto College, that sets you apart from all the other schools, in particular your SEED program.
And I think, you know, that is key. I talk about girls' education as being purposeful education, that everything that we're doing has a purpose around it, where we're trying to develop girls and young women to be, you know, capable, confident, risk-taking, all of those things that are going to lead to life success. So everything needs to be directed from the curriculum that you're doing to your pedagogical practice, to the different experiences that you're giving girls, the language that you're using, even, you know, what you're saying to the girls regarding what you believe about them. We're really lucky in a girls' school context that we can do that really explicitly. So we don't have to sort of work things out for girls and boys. We can just go, right, we're targeting girls. And one of those key areas that we have been working on is our SEED program. And SEED stands for Social, Emotional and Academic Development. And within that, and I think it's really important to recognise the relationship between those three elements, that you can't have one flourishing without the other. So you don't get academic results if you're falling down the social and emotional areas of girls and young women. And what we found when we went looking, you know, for a good program, that there weren't programs that were specifically designed for girls. Now, we know, and we know through research, but we know through experience as well, girls undertake a very different journey from childhood through to, you know, young womanhood than what boys do. They go through adolescence differently. Their timeline of going through adolescence is quite different. The impact of adolescence is very different on girls, particularly risk-taking and confidence, their self-identity, all of those things. And they take a really big dip and dive. So our SEED program, we developed then ourselves through all of the research in social, emotional and academic development. So it was very evidence-based. And we looked at, you know, what were the key areas that we need to focus on to ensure that our program is differentiated as the girls grow and develop. So when we're focusing on things like leadership and identity and self-concept, what does that look like from the time you're 5 to 18? And how do we put programs in place that are designed, you know, specifically for those different developmental years, but also really targeted when we start to see girls go through those dips, particularly, you know, really between the ages of 11 and 14. in that peak time of adolescence.
Yeah, no. I had a look at your overview of the SEED program, and it's very detailed, comprehensive. I think it's fantastic. I wish I had that when I was growing up. I think that was one of the motivators as to why I stepped out of corporate and started my leadership consulting practice, in particularly wanting to work with teenage girls, because it's something that I lacked and something that I would have loved to have had at 15 and not 40, or having the opportunity to move into leadership and learn those skills. And one of the things that I found with developing a leadership mindset was it did give me the confidence, courage, and certainty that I can do things. I do have the resources within myself to be the best that I can, to be able to fail and not be overly critical on the failures and punish myself internally to say I'm a bad person, where rather than going, okay, well, where did I fail? What could I have done differently for next time? How can I improve? And it takes the sting out of it. It takes the those sorts of negative feelings out of failure, which allows you to thrive. I mean, I might be a bit different to other students, but I got physically and verbally assaulted as a child growing up because I was born with a facial birth deformity. And so I think a lot of my upbringing was I ended up internalizing a lot of things as shame, like shame for who I am as a person, how I look, how I'm perceived by others. And so I hid away my identity. I didn't know what my identity was. And so when I got into high school, and fortunately my parents put me in a private Catholic all-girls high school to protect me from the bullying that I was receiving. And it took a long time. I had fallen behind in my academic abilities, and in primary school the teachers put me in special classes thinking that I was the problem, that I was dumb because I looked deformed. And so, but at the time they didn't realize that I was going to school with anxiety and stress every day. You know, my heart was racing, I couldn't think of concepts and remember things. And so it wasn't until I went to high school and having to learn new concepts, but actually picking up all the stuff that I still didn't grasp. And but I still had those internal beliefs of not being good enough. So I punished myself. I self-inflicted things, you know. So if I did really well, I was like really happy. But then it was like if I failed, then it was like, oh no, I'm a bad person, I'm not good enough. And so that's exactly what you're saying in terms of, you know, we want to make sure that the emotional and psychological needs of a student is in alignment with their academic abilities. Because for me, when I got into year 12, it was all or nothing for me. If I didn't get into university, I was going to be a failure. And so I had put very strict rules on myself to say that because of how I looked, and saying that, well, I was rejected by society because I was different. So then I put all my eggs into the academic basket because I knew that in order for me to gain respect or to be equal to everyone else, I had to get into university so I could be like everyone else. So, and if I didn't get into university, then I had an exit strategy in terms of, you know, suicide. So it's not pretty. And then you grow up with those concepts as well. So then it's not over when you finish the HSC, you get into university, and then you have to sit for exams every 6 months, which is like sitting the HSC again over and over and over, and having to compete and having to, you know, and it's a whole different level. You know, it's a big jump going from year 12 to first year university. You know, so yeah, it's
sort of multiple things in relation to that, and
yeah,
can deal with these things explicitly through their programs, which is what they need to do, and they've got to be really mindful, you know, and purposeful, as I said, about that. But girls are judged so harshly for their physical appearance, and their understanding for their identity is then formed from that. And that's in society all around them. They get that feedback every single day from every magazine they open, from every, you know, Instagram post, from, you know, every image that they see of women presents a particular view of women. And, you know, girls develop this understanding that's, you know, that's the only acceptable view of women that there is, and they try to achieve that, and it's, you know, it's unattainable. It's unattainable for 99%, of the population. So you do have to do a lot of explicit work with girls around this idea of self-love,
Yes.
and self-acceptance. And it's quite common that I will talk to the girls about this broadly at assembly. You can't love someone else until you love yourself first. And we don't like talking about that. We don't like saying, oh, I have to love myself. That sounds like self-conceit or whatever. You go, no, that's about respect. Respect for self before respect for others. And that's how it flows. But, I'm quite interested in what we call attribution theories as well, about where girls attribute their success and failure. And girls are more likely to attribute their success to an external cause. So if they do well in something, they'll say, oh, maybe I had a great teacher, or the test was easy, or, it was something outside of their self that led to that success.
Yes.
When they either fail or don't do as expected, then they attribute that failure to internal.
Yes.
And that is, I'm dumb, I must be stupid, or I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, all of those things. And boys tend to do the opposite to that. They tend to attribute success to themselves and go, man, I'm good, I'm brilliant. I nailed that, I'm awesome. And when they fail, it's more likely to be someone else's fault. So it's, and that's why we have to have different programs for girls and boys. And whilst I'm an advocate for girls' education, because I want to really specialise in how we build strong and powerful women and girls, and I can do that so explicitly in a girls' school context. Not that you can't do it in a co-ed school, but you've got to be explicit about it.
Yes.
You've got to look at boys and girls are developing differently, and that, confidence and risk-taking is going to be different for those two different groups. So unless you've got programs that are looking at the difference, and not just leadership programs that say, well, here's leadership,
yes,
general, concept, and we're going to teach you all about leadership, that's not hitting the mark, because leadership is different for women as it is for men in the journey that they need to undertake and in their development of understanding of it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you mentioned that, because I've had a lot of flack people going, why are you just focusing on teenage girls and not boys and leadership? And I said, well, because, the characteristics and, and for me, coming from experience and also being a scientist and going through and seeing what's happening in the real world and the challenges that the Gen X women are facing, the mothers will know of your students as well, that their own challenges. And it's like, well, reverse engineer something, but based on in your research as well, you've gone from that way upways, I've come from that way downways, and it's like at least, and there's a really great synergy and overlap, and it's really great to see. I really love what you're doing, Nicole, and I don't know anyone else that's doing this in Australia.
Well, it's such an important task, and when people say why you're focusing on just girls, go, when we have gender equity in society, we won't need to do that anymore. But we're hundreds of years off based on the current trends of equity actually being in place. So, so someone's got to be in there advocating for the girls.
I think it's fantastic.
And schools that gives us that environment, and the girls will do well academically, but it's the social emotional that we have to focus on for life success.
Yeah, no, I agreed. And one of the great things about being in an all-girls school is that it's an environment where the girls have the opportunity to give everything a go. All these types of leadership roles, whether it's sport, music, sciences, engineering, woodwork, whatever, and it gives them a sense of identities and role models as opposed to being in a co-educational school where maybe it's more gender focused for the boys to be in engineering and mathematics and girls doing more arts. So I think it's it gives them a great perspective on what they can be and what they in a safe environment.
Yeah, one of the common things I hear is, why would you have a girls' school? Because it doesn't represent normal society. And that's the point in its entirety. We're not trying to replicate normal society, we're trying to challenge it. We're trying to challenge those gender stereotypes. And it's part of our mission statement for our school, actually. Being a Loreto school, it's in the mission statement for all Loreto schools in Australia, to challenge gender stereotypes, to build young women to be, to make a difference to the world and to bring about change in society. And we need to do that explicitly in that environment. So when girls walk into a physics class at my school, they're not seen as a minority based on, most of the students in the class being male. So developing, again, an identity that says I have a place here. I can then continue beyond school because that identity's been formed and I've been told that's okay. And, girls are to be celebrated. Too much of society is about what is wrong with women when they don't fit that mold and that particular model. So if we can have an environment where every day we say being a girl is awesome, being a girl is to be celebrated, being a girl is a great honour, and your body is your vessel, and you are the most beautiful thing, regardless of what you look like and who you are. And if we can work on that understanding of themselves and give them a space where they're really safe. I watch our girls come together at lunchtime and do dance parties, and they'll do that from reception, 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds. They'll all be there dancing together in the playground.
Yeah.
Too many people say to me, it wouldn't happen in a college school because they're not judged by anyone. They can just be who they are and not have to worry about a harsh judgment on not adhering to this sort of gender stereotype of being this ideal, version of a woman, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Actually, it brings me back to when I was in primary school. I used to do the Grease. Remember the Grease musical? The ending? I used to do it with my friend of mine, we used to do dancing. That's funny. But yeah, no, that's fantastic. And look, if people would like to know more about you and your school, where can they find you?
Well, visit
I'll
our
have it
website.
there.